It sounded like a Michelob Ultra.
I know, right?
Here we are on episode, I don't even know, episode 80 something? Sure. 82, 83
85.
of the 85? Sure. We're just making things up. 82, episode 82 of the Trash Talk Business Podcast, coming to you live this week and most weeks now that we figured this thing out. I'm Andy Weins, coming from the great state of Wisconsin. Joining me, as always, Casey Bubba Lawrence. Casey from Texas. What are we talking about today?
Yeah, well, we have a great guest, okay? By popular demand, it is Russ Burry, Andrew Barton, and a couple other guys that do okay. It's Justin Waltz, right? They talk highly of him. Justin, we have never met, okay? We talked briefly on social media. Not really. We never even had a conversation other than this right here.
Crazy.
So I'm very interested. I saw your name first pop up maybe a year and a half ago.
Sure.
Maybe a year ago. Yeah, about a year ago when we really started getting into the junk removal groups and all that fun. I think we actually got banned out of one of them. The way, I think it's the discussion group, the one that
nice.
I don't remember, the one that Kyle guy's in or something. Anyways, Justin, please tell everyone here that doesn't know, what do you do? Why do you do it? And who the hell are you?
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. Yeah, Russ, Andrew, a bunch of other guys, good friends. So if we kind of go all the way back, because might as well just go way, way, way back. I was born and raised into the restaurant world. So was born into the restaurant business, the hospitality business. So customer service kind of fits in my blood. But my dad forced me out of the industry, which I'm happy to say. I'm happy to not be in the food service business. Restaurateurs and successful restaurant entrepreneurs are just a completely different breed to me. It's wild. So in my journey to get out of the restaurant industry, I found junk removal. I started in 2005, driving a truck for 1-800-GOT-JUNK. I think my first paycheck was like $9.15 an hour, and actually getting out of the restaurant industry and getting a paycheck sucks. I don't know if anyone ever remembers that, because, I'm basically going home every night with like a wad of cash. And then all of a sudden I got a cash out check and like 3/4 of it's gone. You're like, what the hell?
So, taxes are a mother.
Yeah. So that was my first, I guess you say your W-2 experience, but it just so happened to be with 1-800-GOT-JUNK back in the day when I was the 16th location, Baltimore, Maryland. My franchise owner at the time, his name's Alan Klug. He's kind of like a big brother, just incredible mentor. He's also an accountant and a finance guy. I mean, he's just super, super smart. Just so happened to get interested in the junk removal business as an accountant. And so we were the 16th business, 2005. I think we were doing like maybe $200,000 in sales. No office, just a Ford F450 was my first junk removal truck. We had, that thing sounded like a school bus. I actually picked up friends in that thing before back in the day, and and ended up growing that business to over 1.7 million. From the very first truck meeting on the hood of the truck, like snowing, raining, to, multiple, I think 30,000 square foot warehouse and sorting facility and transfer stations and all kind of fun stuff in Baltimore. And then through connections and through desires to be in Florida, went down to South Florida, and for whatever reason, I ended up doing it again and partnered with the owners of the Palm Beach franchise down in South Florida, 1-800-GOT-JUNK. And that was my first sweat equity opportunity. So I kind of got the opportunity to take on the business, earn my equity, earn a salary, but also earn equity, and then grew that business. And then I think I was on a fishing trip, and I ended up buying a business called Handyman Connection from the owners, who just needed to get rid of it. It was kind of like a fire sale. It's like we need this off our books. And so I partnered with the owners of Got Junk down in Palm Beach and bought a franchise called Handyman Connection, which is like a home improvement franchise down in South Florida. We took it over. It had a bunch of employees and grew it to over 1 million. And then I just decided I didn't enjoy I had 3 customers, basically. I had contractors. I had my W-2 handymen that were prima donnas. And then I also had my actual customers. So I'm in the real estate business now, but I'll never be a GC again. Like I just can't, I just cannot stand renovating for friends and family. Or customers. I'd rather just renovate my own houses because they can't talk back to me. So fast forward there.
Say,
what's that?
adding to that, the only
Yeah.
time I've seen a really good GC is that they are partners in that property. Then it's a different story. Just wanted to put that out there because I'm all about it, man. Like I'm like F that noise.
Yeah, or if they are getting a $50 to $100K profit margin, like I'll do a kitchen for 150 grand all day, but I'll never do a kitchen for 20 grand ever again. So I guess there's always a dollar amount, right, for the pain if you're willing to suffer. But yeah, I totally hear you there. And then so I came back to the junk removal space, kind of missing it, and the mission was to go to Tampa and meet with Nick and Omar. And I had already kind of known Nick and Omar of College Chunks before because we had driven past each other a ton up in Maryland, DC, because Baltimore and DC very close to each other. And the DC market is the #1 junk removal market in the United States. And then Toronto being the #1 junk removal market in the North America. So I was just next door to the market and got to see Nick and Omar kind of grow College Chunks, wondering who the hell these orange and green trucks were riding around. So then I got this idea to go to Tampa and meet with Nick and Omar about opening a franchise down in Fort Lauderdale. And it was like, hey, you work for 1-800-GOT-JUNK for 9 years. Like, what's the strategy there? I was like, there really is no strategy. I was like, let's just open a College Chunks right next door to every Got Junk in the country. Like it makes sense. It's like there was no Burger King at the time. It was all McDonald's, So if you look at the burger business, the hotel business, you look at all these other industries, like #2 pays pretty well. So it was a pretty easy strategy. And it was like, all right, so we had breakfast, lunch, and dinner together. And I was like, why don't you come work for the corporate office? And that long story short, I ended up in Tampa, second operations employee at College Chunks, 9th overall corporate employee. I still have the email, late 2014 when the offer came through. And then ended up growing College Chunks to about 120 owners, about 150 employees. We went from an average store volume of about 200,000 in when we got up to about 10 stores, we had about 200,000 because our first year was a pretty slow ramp. And then my second year, we ended up selling about 40 licenses, and we ramped again and then ramped again. And then I spent about a year just kind of working on compliance and getting everyone rowing in the same direction with a bunch of other incredible operations folks. And our store volume went from 200,000 to $1 million in revenue total. That includes junk and moving. And then as of today, you can see like they continue to just explode across the country. So it's been pretty cool to watch College Chunks do that. And then, so I parted ways with College Chunks. I published a book in 2018, parted ways with College Chunks. The organization got huge. I got really entrepreneurial again and started consulting, but I was under a non-compete. And so I just jumped online, and there were no like junk removal like groups. There were nowhere to really look at, how to grow a junk removal business. There was no YouTube action yet. That stuff just happened a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. And there was no TikTok, none of that stuff. It was really Facebook groups. And so David Lettick, Junk MD out in San Diego, somehow we connected in a Facebook group that I named like the Junk Removal Summit or something back then. And then I just started helping people out randomly, like do this, do that. This is what we do here. I'm not in the business. Like I can't be in the business. I'm on a non-compete. So I'm happy to just answer questions and help. And I think the junk removal space was big enough and still is big enough for, 10 other major competitors. So I just jumped online and started helping people. That was back in 2018. And then got a lot of attention, a lot of action, a lot of folks started following and jumping in. And I just started recording myself talking into the phone like once a day. And I think fast forward like 5 years later, we've had about 10 in-person events. And I just put everything online about 6 months ago at the request of probably 50 other people. So we had about 200 people come through. My longest commitment has been about 50 weeks of working with business owners. We've had a lot of masterminds. And that was just based on folks wanting to spend time together and learn more and really grow the business. And my model had always been on advocacy for the industry. So if you look at the industry itself, you go back to moving, right? Moving started out in the 1800s, and moving has had kind of ups and downs. Moving has had positive momentum. It has negative momentum because of scams and things like that. And there's a lot of advocacy for moving because there's a lot of scammers out there. And so for junk removal, my mission was always just let's make sure that we try and legitimize the industry as best as we possibly can. I know it's a low barrier to entry business. I know you can get in with a truck and trailer and like a tool belt. But I also think that the more we can do to advocate for the legitimacy of this industry, the more we'll actually see this business grow. Which if you look at things like other home services, right? You look at like landscaping, or you look at, you know, just basic home services like painting or flooring or moving or cleaning and things like that. You see these businesses that as they start to get more, you know, advocacy and they start to get more recognition, like this is my junk removal company, this is my cleaner, this is that. You start to see that it'll raise all tides. And so I frankly, I think that's where we are in the industry. So thanks for kind of the long-winded intro.
No, that I absolutely appreciate, you know, where you came from. You and I talked, you know, once or twice, and it's important. You know, one of the things I've seen with a lot of other podcasts is, and even I've seen this. I used to work in radio. People are like, oh yeah, we were just talking during the break, and da da da. It's like, no, let's just, you know, even when you and I talked, it was a very brief. Hey, let's get you on the podcast. Sounds good.
Yeah.
What's next? Right? Like, I mean, that was probably, and other guests can attest for this. That was probably the longest I vetted somebody out. And it was more you guys were you were more vetting me to see if it was a good use of your time. Because normally people are like, hey, I want to be on the podcast. I'm like, cool. Right. And we've had a couple of podcasts where people came on and tried to sell some shit and we'll poke holes in it. We've had other ones where people try to sell some shit and I'm like, oh shit, like Uzar, he was on like a month ago or 6 weeks ago. And I'm probably gonna hire him to do some SOP stuff with me, right? Like, because he was awesome. So yeah, it was it's good to have you on because there's a couple of things that you were talking about that people really haven't talked about, which is the advocacy and the legitimacy of the business. And it's something I've absolutely harped on. I've been doing this in some capacity since 2009, and I was absolutely chucking a truck for a long time there, and I didn't put the work in to make my business legitimate. So I didn't deserve to have legitimate contracts, or, you know, I didn't know what a COI was, right? And so there's a chance for people to step up. The majority of our listeners, maybe not, I would say, the majority of our business listeners are independent owner operators. So you come from the franchise world. What are some things right off the bat that, you know, the advantages, because I'm a very anti-franchise. Our first episode of Why Not to Franchise, right? And right, that's it. Like I you know, that's a hill I'm willing to die on. So what are some things, you know, from your perspective, what are some advantages? Because I don't want to hear about Big Blue and right. It's like, there's 1,000 restaurants in your town, and 500 of them are, you know, shit McDonald's and Burger Kings, and yet there's still 500 not shit McDonald's and Burger Kings, right? So what are some advantages that you've seen that independent owner operators can take advantage of, you know, versus the big boys, the Blues and the Oranges of the world? Yeah,
it's a great question. And just so you know, I convince most people not to franchise. That's actually part of my business. So, you know, kind of fast forward 2018 to now, where are we? So my full-time career, where I spend the majority of my time, is in franchise operations. And so I actually took the junk removal business, which taught me the concept called franchising. And then I was able to utilize that concept to then meet hundreds of other people, including Nick and Omar at College Hunks, which then spiraled not just a junk removal career, but also a franchising career. Because the way we launched College Hunks was ultimately on the backs of a lot of, you know, great operational procedures, but PR, right? We were on every single show you can imagine, right? We were on Hoarding, we were on Shark Tank, we were on Buried Alive, Fox News, Oprah, you name it. And so we utilized that momentum to drive the franchise space, which drove investors towards us, which is how we got so many franchise owners. So I actually used that and propelled that into a career in franchise operations, and have been on the private equity side, the non-equity side, which is bootstrapping businesses. And I've opened and been a part of about 1,200 small businesses in fitness, women's boutique, the kids spaces like kids gyms and kids swimming and karate. Everything from very light, like pizza, so I've been involved in that, all the way to every single home service you could ever imagine, like flooring, painting, cleaning, junk removal, moving. So I've had the opportunity to not just stay in the junk space, but also observe, you know, the way that about 1,200 other businesses have either opened or grown. And the franchise space is a standard operating procedure to drive a business, unless there's a proprietary offer, a proprietary piece of equipment, right? In junk removal, we don't have anything proprietary, right? What we have is ourselves, our hospitality, our speed to lead, things like that. Those are the biggest differences, right? So I think when I was thinking about this today, I was like, what is the concept of small business, right? What are we all achieving? And for me, And this is something that I thought about this after my third trip to Home Depot at 7:45 this morning, because I'm sick and tired of driving around for one of my contractors who uses me as a slave. And I actually was thinking to myself, I hate small business because small business annoys me. I need a business that's big enough to serve me and serve the business in order to be efficient, right? And so what that means is, like, I would rather own a 20-story or a 30-story hotel than like a 3-story hotel, right? Because the 3-story hotel has the exact same problems as the 20-story hotel. But the 20-story hotel provides me enough revenue that I can hire a manager, I can hire a cleaning crew, I can probably buy a couple additional pieces of equipment that is going to make my life easier, right? Things like that. So for me, what I have learned over the years, it's leverage. And the only way to operate a business is looking at leverage, right? Because for me, my personality, I've done a million different personality tests, but when I start something and I get in the machine and I start driving the machine, eventually I got to get out of that machine. Like I get bored. And so a business that's so small, it doesn't make enough revenue or doesn't cash flow well enough to allow me to expand other systems and other processes and equipment, territory, things like that, to allow the business to actually serve me so that I can decide what I want to do in the business. That's ultimately where I like to go with business. Whereas if I have a business that's so small that I don't have enough margin in my product or offering, that I got to do everything, right? That's where I get caught up. And so I think for me, it's what can you learn from the franchise organizations? It's that any franchise that has an operational backing is going to push the business owner, and you're going to get outside your comfort zone, and you're going to be forced to grow to afford your next level of where you're headed, right? The franchise concept kind of won't let you sit in that truck in the truck era for very long.
Yeah, that's the challenge in junk removal. That's the number one challenge. The question we get: how do we get out of the truck? Right. And there's a number there, right? It's, somewhere between 2 and 4 trucks, depending on your operation. And then when do you get to a point where, you and maybe 1 or 2 other leaders in the organization can't handle the volume. And then you get to a point where you got, 1 manager for every leader for every person on a truck. And it's like, well, that's way too top heavy. And that's the challenge of this industry. That a lot of people,
the number one challenge for most entrepreneurs in this country.
Yeah, correct. This isn't correct. Yeah,
right.
Junk rule, we say get out of the truck, but it's like, how do I stop doing the thing and hire enough people and get over that hump? There's a lot of businesses that die in the gray zone because they take on the fixed expenses of the next level, and yet they don't change their mindset or aren't willing to continue to invest or don't have the funds to continue to invest to get through to maximize those fixed expenses. Go ahead, Casey, and then we're going to go to a caller.
Yeah, so I was looking at, how we brought the numbers up. Just, you may have this more relevant than I do right now, but they say most small businesses fail within 5 years. Yeah. And we were looking at that. I was at dinner Friday night with a buddy of mine. He's a doctor, he's a Marine, good dude, smart guy. And we're talking about it. He goes, normally you leave your honeymoon phase around year 5. And about year 5, year 6, it becomes the work phase. And a lot of people don't understand what that's like. So when they hit that work phase, it becomes a burden to them. And now they went out of that relationship because they're used to that honeymoon phase. And I brought up my business as an example because he was actually, we were really close friends while I was doing J-Dog and stuff. And he was like, when did you sell your business? I said, in our 6th year. And my 2 options were to take it over 100% and keep driving forward, or let's sell it. And he goes, what was your first option? I said, selling. He goes, why? I go, because I couldn't see myself doing that for the next 5 to 10 years, because even at my position there and our experience, and Andy knows all about my experience there, even at that time in my life, I knew that I was going to be so involved. And even if I got bigger, all it took was a couple people to just make bad decisions where now I'm back into an everyday day-to-day operational seat that I didn't want to be in. So I had to look at it like, do I really want to stay in this relationship with junk removal?
Right.
Or if there's a way to exit, how can I do that? And I think a lot of us get in that small businesses, not just junk removal, but a lot of us get to that point. It's like amazing. It's great. It's honeymoon phase. And then you get to that work phase. You're like, holy shit. Like, man, I've been doing this for so long. And I mean, it's not just a thin margin on financials. It's a thin margin on stress and time. I mean, if you can go into a tailspin mentally over something so small, that means you're probably checking out soon.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I think to your point, both of you guys hit on two things. But then we'll go. I know Andy, we got some questions, but undercapitalization, right? That's the number one challenge of every small business in America. Is personally, I can't stand working with small business owners because most of them don't have any money, and that's just life, right? Yep. And then number two is to your point, Casey, is there are dips, and a lot of those dips are what crashed the business, right? And so a lot of people don't talk about the second challenge of getting off the truck is death by one, or death by one operations manager, death by one employee, right? So the second challenge after you get off the truck is, are you dead if that employee leaves the business, right? So another reason that you guys are talking about is I want to grow a bigger business. Like to your point, Andy, I want 4 trucks because I want to have 2 or 3 quality individuals on my bench.
Yep.
At all times. Like relying on one employee terrifies me just as much as being in the truck every day.
Yeah, no, I was thankful and I was very fortunate the way that I transitioned, that my one employee was my brother, right? He was the one person I could count on. And yeah, you're right. It is, you have one bad operations person, you can be out of business in 90 days and you won't even know it when your processes are in place. Now, when your processes are in place, you'll know within a week, if not a day, when things are going south, right? I love me some data. As soon as the data don't make sense, there's something. The data not making sense is a symptom of a bigger problem, and we got to nip those things in the bud. All right. Speaking of bigger problems, let's go to Grant. Grant says, "What was the toughest challenge you faced during your time in junk removal, and how did you overcome it?" Jump on it.
The 2 things that we already been talking about are the biggest challenges. Number one is cash flow. Right. And so with cash flow is the next challenge, which is hiring employees and growing the business and ultimately scaling. So it's the number one challenge. It's managing the cash.
Where'd all my cash go?
Yeah. Well, it's employees. Yeah. So I've talked about this for 5 years. It's like, all right, the first truck barely pays the bills. The second truck pays the bills and also makes payroll when you have employees. That third truck is ultimately where maybe you'll start putting a peanut butter and jelly sandwich in your mouth. Right, every now and then, or maybe you'll earn a quarter of your income back that you could go and make on a W-2 employment. Right.
Yep.
So I think the biggest challenge of growing the junk removal business, my handyman business, my real estate business is cash flow, and then making those tough decisions. Right. And so what you guys are talking about, I always like to talk about action items and like, okay, put myself in the mindset of that guy that's in the truck every single day. What's the next step? The next step is replacing yourself. And that's the hardest thing to do. The best way to do it is financially, right? So perfect example, again, last night, I was at Home Depot last night. I was at Home Depot this morning. I'm literally talking to my partner about, I cannot wait to hire the project manager. Like I already have the job description. I already know the requirements. I already know what I'm going to have to pay this person. And that is a tough one, right? That's a tough hire. That's going to be like an 80K hire because I need somebody with a construction background. And I got to now take on that short-term hit of $80,000 on my payroll. I got to take that on. I got to replace that. I've got to take that time that I've been replaced myself. I've got extra time. I got to then go and make that 80K back up just to pay for that individual. So I think that being able to scale the business intelligently, which means by making those investments, when you make those couple of hires, you make those investments in the future, knowing what that's going to do to your business from a cash flow perspective, knowing how to best forecast what that means. What do you need? What are you going to do about it? That's the hurdle that you have to make. And that's the toughest hurdle, especially when you're by yourself. It's just you and your bank account. And you've got to decide, do I want to go to that next level? Or am I just going to grind it out and keep going?
Yeah, one of the challenges, and one of the things that we get that question almost always, what is the toughest challenge? And the thing is, there is no magic bullet, right? There's some things to avoid, absolutely. And yet what you talked about are the number one challenge, and everybody's situation is different.
Being a small business owner, that's the number one biggest challenge.
Yeah, not having a boss, right? Like
there you
go. Yeah.
Not having someone tell you when you're ready, right? That's it. Like, and having this stomach when you first start, you got nothing to lose, and then eventually you have something to lose, and then you're like, oh shit, right? And I'm running our operation here. We're up to 6 to 8 trucks in the summer. We'll keep it at least 4 trucks over the winter. I got a lot to lose. Right now we're at 18 employees. That's 18 people that count on me to make sure we have work. Not even next week, next month, this week, right? I mean, we had about a half hour before I got on here. I was on the phone with Ken, our company president, and we were just kind of giving me an update. He's like, "Yeah, we had a 7-trailer job cancel on Friday." I'm like, "All right." Right now, in the past, that would have been devastating. Now it's like, okay, what jobs can we move up for next week? What estimates do we have yet this week? It's like, there's no such thing as good news or bad news. It's new information and what you do with it. And that's the key. As a business owner, you got to know what to do with it. One of the things that you touched on, Justin, was the fact that, junk roll franchises, they happen to have a catchy brand with a good fucking playbook. That's it. Like, it's an SOP. There's nothing else proprietary about junk roll. We've been talking about that. It is the license and the right to use the name. Yeah. Big Blue has something proprietary when it comes to their number one in the market, right? And there is something there, right? That is, and it's proprietary in the sense that in the mindset that they are the brand leader, and they have processes that you can't replicate. You're not going to replicate their call centers, right? That you can replicate parts of it, but you're not going to replicate the whole thing. And so that is the challenge, is you ultimately decide your success. The challenge is, I think, the other challenge is people get into this and the money is so good at the beginning. And then you get that second truck and then you're like, where did it all go? And it's because people aren't planning.
Right.
That, again, it all goes back to data, right? Data-driven decisions.
Everything that we do is data-driven. Everything has to have a forecast. A forecast tells a story. So basically, you should be writing your story for what 2024 is going to look like. And ultimately, when I write budgets, I create 5 different plans per budget. That's kind of my finance background. Is there's a 5% chance that this really, really bad thing could happen. There's another 5% chance that this really, really, really good thing could happen. And then there's about 3 different things. That's the good, better, best model in between. And then I reforecast every month. I do a rolling 12 to see where are we on that dartboard, or where are we on that journey. And so far, I typically fall within those 1.5, degrees of separation. But business, the way that we avoid that entrepreneurial trap of like, I'm my own boss, is business is simply measured by inputs and outputs. And if you look at everything from an input output perspective, as an entrepreneur, you can be honest with yourself. Are you putting in enough to generate the output that you're seeking, right? And so, like, for example, right now, I harp heavily at the end of the year, and this year is extra special because 2024 is going to suck. It's not going to be a great year. And I'm telling everyone in my group, you guys have seen it, right? Is that the next 5 months, the work that you do for the next 5 months is ultimately going to determine what kind of year you have in 2024. We're in a stagflation moment, right? We have transactions are way down. I know that. But there are still going to be there's still going to be opportunity there. And I think the opportunity is going to be tremendous to steal market share, especially for those that don't plan and get aggressive. But I think from now until end of March, like the work that you do and the aggression that you do now is going to determine 2024. And I would say, like, if you looked at the inputs that you put in 2021, everyone made money in 2021, including myself. Everyone just got rich in 21. Like, that is what it is. 22, same thing. Like, we rode some momentum. Pockets were still pretty fat. 23 is where we start to see the weird headlines and the housing market slow down, right? So in junk removal, of course, like, absolutely, we're going to see that slow down. But there's plenty of us that aren't slow in 2023. There's plenty of folks that are busy. Mm-hmm. But if you look at the inputs that you put into the business in 21, or the inputs that you put into the business in 22, right? Your marketing activity, your sales activity, your investment dollars, right? Whatever. All the inputs in 2021 and 2022, I think right now you should probably be doubling, if not tripling, those inputs just to try and maintain par for the course in 2024. And what you'll do is you'll steal some market share while you're on top of it.
Yeah, I mean, this year's been that for us. It is twice the effort to get what we got the last 2 years.
Same result.
Really, I wasn't involved in the business in 21 like you. I sat through a non-compete, and yeah, it has been double the work to, especially on the commercial side, to maintain what momentum we had. I do like your KPIs. I do a good, better, best, right? Yeah. And I have this is what I need. This is what I want. This would be great. I do not do the high 5, low 5. That would whatever. Like, that's it's interesting.
It's the high five, low five is like the canary in the coal mine, right? Like,
yeah. If we
I
hit this, we're fucked. Yeah.
If I hit that low five, I'm like, holy crap, I screwed something up. Like that, like we're headed down.
Yeah. Well, the point is you have it, and that's the thing is, I would tell this to anyone. Like, if you don't even have one of those, that's where you need to start. And what you were saying is these next 5 months are so crucial. So in Texas, we don't have really a long winter. We don't. But we do have the seasonal holiday time frame that everyone else has, except the weather is a little bit different down here. We have a lot of storms, which could be good for your business. But the one thing I learned from a custom home builder years ago, he builds giant castles. And this dude's amazing. He builds about 3 houses a year because each one is probably 30,000, 20,000 square feet. They're insane. And he's seen some of them. But the one thing I learned from him is during the slow times, he goes, that's when you work on your business. He's like, call your guys in on a day that you have no jobs. We'll push jobs to another day to make a full day. Right. Call your guys in, go through training, go through, put someone in charge of the training, test their leadership skills. He's like, that's the time you don't have an excuse to say, oh, I'm too busy. Do layouts. I mean, there's so much you could be doing within your business to make yourself a better business owner and your guys better leaders that you don't normally get a chance to do because you're out there grinding. This is the time to do it. Now, the next question is, well, what about money? I can't afford to bring people in if I'm not getting jobs. But that's also a catch-22 in itself as well, because if you bring people in to better them, right, then what's to say that next week they're not out there pounding pavement getting you some more business as well? So I think it's just one of those things that, like you said, sometimes you have to double down in order to get the same results. But what I'm seeing is there's companies that are still opening up business right now, starting fresh. Oh, yeah. And if the times were that bad, then they wouldn't even be touching it. You have real estate agents that do junk removal on the side now. I never would have thought that had been happening, but they're doing that on the side because they understand 2 things. 1, real estate's tanking. And 2, there's some quick money to be had in junk removal. And it's good for the people that have been doing the right thing from, 2020, maybe 2021, and who've been doing the right thing with their money. There's a good thing here because they're going to last through 2024 storm. And these agents, I think last month they did a poll through MLS. It's like, I don't know, 80,000 agents went out just this year alone. Yeah. Like, that's insane. Oh, yeah. So you have to understand that in your market. What do you see the difference in your market? If you're not looking at your market, well, that's the first step, right? What does my market call for? Because right now, I have about maybe 15 new junk removal companies in my immediate area alone since the beginning of the year.
Oh, yeah. There's going to be silver linings everywhere. 2024, 2025 is who knows what's coming. But I'm old. I mean, I was around for 2007. 2007 stunk. I can tell you that in 2008, 71% of our business came from repeat or referral, which is another reason. So if I go back to the earlier conversation, what did we talk about? I love trying to get more from my customers than trying to get new customers. Mm-hmm. Like, I am obsessed with, if you're not maniacally in love with your customers so that only time they think about junk removal, they think about you, then you don't love your customers enough. And so maybe that's psychological, but in 2008, 71% of our business came back from existing customers. Right. And that went from like 40% up to 71. Now we dropped 700K. We did 1 million in 2008. We did 1.7 million in 2007. And I can tell you that when that came back, that was enough to get us through. Right. Yeah. And what people don't talk about enough is that if you get through 24, 25 and you're able to grow, steal market share, find a way to stay in the game and grow in the game because you're hustling, you're grinding, 2026, 2027, 2028, that's where you're going to make your money. And that's where you're going to make a lot of money. And I keep looking at kind of the downturns versus the up cycles. Downturns are a third of the distance of an upcycle. And we've been in an upcycle for like 18 years. I mean, you take COVID out of it, right? So the stagflation is what it is. We're going to have it. But what comes after that is a gold mine for junk removal.
So I have a question for you. This was on Facebook.
Yeah.
Sorry, Andy.
I'll
shut up here in a minute. This isn't through the comments. This was actually on Facebook a couple days ago. Oh. And there was a question that came in and it was like, hey, what do you recommend? This is to you actually. And I answered I put my opinion on it. It was like, what do you recommend for another service or a side hustle? when the season, when the winter comes, right? Or when the down season comes. I never saw your answer. I saw other people answering as well. And then I put my answer. I just put junk removal, and he thought I was kidding, but I wanted you to elaborate on that a little bit.
It's a great question, right? And so I have some things that my students know this. So there's some checkpoints. There's some absolute checkpoints before I even think you should be thinking about something else. My first checkpoint in junk removal is 5 zip codes performing at $100,000 or more in revenue annually. That's my first kind of checkpoint. And I've had franchisees for years, right? This happens in every business, not just in junk removal, but you get bored, you start getting squirrely, or you want to know, how do I add on, right? And so I always ask our followers, are you truly saturated? There's about 35 zip codes in junk removal that are doing over $300,000 in business in one zip code in one business. What I think about our business is we have to saturate. We're basically a pizza store. We're a rolling pizza store. And so I'm kind of tangenting for a second there because we do get those questions. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Well, what do? You grow your business. So I support your answer there, Casey, because a lot of our franchisees, any business, doesn't matter, junk removal, and a lot of our independent guys don't think about where are they growing and how are they growing intentionally, right? It's just, what's the market giving? What's the market sending me? And I'm never a downstream guy. I always like to go upstream and see what I can find upstream. And when I'm downstream, it means that I'm just catching what the market's throwing at me. And so I like to be intentional with our growth. And I love pizza. The reason I love pizza is we all have 15 pizza stores in our market. And you probably know one or two. If I asked you right now, Casey, let's go get pizza, where you're going to go. And it's probably about less than 2 miles. I would say on average, it's about 1.5 miles from your house. It might be 2 miles or 3 miles, depending on.
There's two. Yeah. Right outside. There's Domino's and Papa John's.
There you go. And if you look at that model, guess where 85% of the pizza business comes from? It comes from a 1.5 mile radius around the store, right? And so
it's funny you mentioned that. There's 2 Domino's in my area.
Yeah.
There's one that's closer to me, and they can't do business with me. They can't deliver to me.
Right.
Because the one that's down the street, like an extra minute,
right,
they do that.
And if you don't, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
It's the same. It's the same owner.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't know this. So I was asking questions to the manager, because you start asking these analytical questions. And I was like, hey, I'm just curious, why would y'all not deliver if I'm closer than your competition? He goes, well, that's actually our owners. He owns both of them. I go, really? Well, he owns 17 Domino's in the DFW area. So I hit him up and I was wanting to meet him. And guess where we met? This is hilarious. We met at an Italian pizzeria in downtown Fort Worth.
Perfect.
And I asked him, I go, why do you do this? He goes, man, if you don't saturate your market, then what are you doing in business? He's like, there's no reason to be in business unless you're just bored.
Yeah.
And he goes, it's a franchise, but if he can saturate his market, the money he's paying, it's like a tenfold what he's getting because he has the market share. Right.
Mm-hmm. Well, he basically has 17 trucks. If he has 17 Domino's running around, he has 17 trucks, because the average Domino's is going to generate about 60 to 100K of profit, right? Just enough to drive a little cash to the bottom line. But if he has 20 of those things, he's now a $6 million man.
Yeah, exactly. And the investment, and that's the thing, is the return is insane. So it's technically it may cost me this much to open up. I already know, based on this model, I already know what I'm getting back. Minimum.
Yeah.
So if anything, it's a dumb move not to buy this area over here. And then you start tracking growth, and you start tracking the actual economics of business versus real estate versus, future predictions. I could go on and on, but it really stuck with me because, for one, we ate somewhere else that wasn't even a Domino's, and we had pizza. But for two, the fact that he owns so many Domino's and a lot of them butted up against each other, and he's just it makes sense to saturate.
Two things on that. So if you don't believe me, just look at the history of 1-800-GOT-JUNK. Go back to the very first franchise agreement, I think late 90s, early 2000s. The territory size was 220,000 pop. I think now they do single family dwelling units. If you go to buy a 1-800-GOT-JUNK franchise now, they reduced the territory offering from 220 down to 62,500. The smallest territories in the franchise space is CertaPro Painters, and their territory is 15,000. You barely get a subdivision. And that is all driven to saturation, because we know this in the franchise world. Good question, Andy. What do you take away from the franchise world? we know this from this franchise world, is we give franchisees big territories, they can't saturate because they don't have $1 million marketing budgets, right? If I try to cover, if I try to blanket all of Atlanta, there's no way. It would cost me $5 million to market to all of Atlanta. But I have a good friend of mine that's been with us since back in the day, 2018. He does Lawrenceville and like one other town. He's driving $1 million just out of like 2 towns, and doesn't even go into Atlanta, which is one of the most competitive junk markets in the country.
That's funny. Our former franchise literally did that. They said, "Hey, let's do all of Atlanta." So they had 6 or 7 different operators in an area that probably could win the small towns, and then Houston. I was part of that one. They tried to take on Houston. Great. They tried to take on all of Houston with 4 trucks.
Yeah,
that was the plan.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
I had a little sirloin of Dallas. I said I had like a filet mignon of Dallas. I just had like this little chunk of Dallas when I was when I owned my College Chunks franchise, and we had 4 trucks. There was no way I could have attacked all of Dallas. Absolutely not.
I was in between Dallas and Fort Worth. I was right outside the airport. Nowhere. I mean, couldn't tell you the actual square mileage, but it wasn't. The surface area wasn't that big.
Right.
But squeezed into it was about, I don't know, 400K. A population, maybe 6, like as far as the later years. But yeah, I mean, that was Andy and I would actually talk about that, because it's like, why would it make sense for us? Because we would get pitched, "Hey, do you want to buy another franchise?" It's like, well, technically, why do I have to? Because
I don't want to drive farther. I don't want to.
Like, I'm not doing my numbers here.
Right.
I don't want to pay for something I'm not ready for yet. You know?
Yeah.
Then I got to drive an hour to go make $100, where I could just drive 5 minutes and make the same 100.
Yeah.
It just didn't make sense.
And that's where I steal from the retail side, right? So I've been lucky enough to be around Orange Theory and Core Power Yoga and Restore Hyper Wellness and a bunch of really, really successful franchise concepts that their mission is to get in the way of the consumer. You got to get in the way of the consumer. And so I talk about trip to trade a lot, or I talk about demographics or sociographics and where the consumers are. Right. And if you look at these, I steal directly. Again, same with Papa John's and Domino's. What do? They get in the way of the consumer. They just want to know, where is the consumer? So I like to, and this is what I talk about a lot, is I look at the retailers that are going after the same exact customer that we're going after, and they're spending millions of dollars on research. Target is the perfect example. Like, we don't need the Lamborghini in the driveway, right? And a lot of our entrepreneurs that are new into our industry think, who the hell is going to pay $800 for a truckload? They must have a Lamborghini in the driveway. And that's always a misconception for us. And so I say, you know what, look at Target and see that the target market and what they're going after. They're going after disposable income. They have about 4 different buyers. They know they have about a 15-minute radius. So people drive about 15 minutes to go to a Target. And then look at all the retailers that kind of follow Target, like Panera Bread, others, right? That's our customer. There it is right there.
Walmart and Lowe's, man.
There's
Walmart, Home Depot. Yeah.
There's a Chili's in every Home Depot parking lot.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. So most concepts cannibalize off of each other. Yeah. So like we don't need to try and beat the horn here. Like the information's already there. And I call those power centers.
So what's one industry you would say that Dunker Removal could easily piggyback off of as far as customers go?
It's a great question. So I'm going to segue that to one question, and then I'll go back, because everyone loves to ask me, why the hell does 2 Men and a Truck have so many trucks in their office? You ever driven past a 2 Men and a Truck office?
Oh my God, 50 of them.
Yeah. Do you know why? Because they know how to leverage debt service to cash flow. So they know that it's going to cost about, I think it's like 24, maybe 30 grand a year to hold a moving truck, right? But that 30K to hold that truck can generate 300K in gross profit. And it only needs to be out like 10 days a year, or 10 days a month. So if you drive by the 2 Men and a Truck office and you see all those trucks parked at the office, that's because the franchise owner knows, I only need to generate 10, 12 moves to pay for this truck. If it does an extra 3, 4, 5 moves a month, because I need those on Saturdays and on holidays and things like that, then I have the opportunity to grow the business, right? So when I think about other industries, is just look for your successful businesses. Look for successful business owners. I like I said, I have no problem being Five Guys when Burger King and the Whopper were already crushing it, right? Like, I have no idea who started Five Guys, but man, that takes some balls. Like the burger market.
It was 5 of them.
Yeah, the burger market was already crushing it. Nice job, Casey.
Oh yeah.
But that answers Grant's question to a certain extent, right? Leveraging debt versus cash. I am all about debt. When I first started in business, it was all about cash. Pay for it, only spend what you can. Now it's a little bit different the last 6, 8, 12 months here as the cost of money has gone up. It's still historically low, the cost of debt, especially if you have it, leveraged against equipment or things like that versus operating capital, right? Though that's probably 9.5%, 10%. The other thing is when it comes to lines of credit, unsecured lines of credit, apply for it and get it and have it there before you need it. That's right. Get approved when you have something in the AR, and then draw from it when you need it. That's the risk you're going to take, right? They're going to ask for quarterly statements, and so long as they see some level of credit history, you're going to be good. Because what I've seen otherwise is, and I did this one time myself, I got to a point where I didn't have the money and I didn't have time to get the money because, to Justin's point, I didn't have the 5%, what if everything goes to hell cash flows plan.
Yep.
I had the if all these things go right, we'll be okay plan. And that wasn't great. And I actually I got emails yesterday over the weekend, like some predatory ass lending, like, hey, you're pre-approved for $90,000. You got 2 years to pay it back, and it's going to cost you $14K. And I was like,
so
wow, that is not a good deal. And like, I did the math. I love me some math. Let me tell you something. That math didn't math very good. That wasn't.
It didn't math right. So, Andy, I'm glad you brought that up. So, when I was doing demo works, I had a line of credit. It was like 30 grand. Okay, I just started out. I had a history with them, but my business was new. Now, I used that line of credit. I don't know how much, but I paid it off, and then I stopped using them for about a year and a half. They emailed me, didn't answer. They called me, left me a voicemail to call them back. And I know them very well, so I did. I said, and they're like, "Hey, what's going on? I'm not in demo anymore." And they're like, "Well, we actually raised your line of credit to $75,000." And I was like, "Why?" "Well, because we want you to do business with us some more." And I was like, "So let me get this straight. I stopped using you for over a year, and because now money's tight, you're actually offering me more than I was even approved for in the beginning. So now it's like, man, if I could technically, I can go rake up 75K in credit with this company." Because they work with Holt, right? With Caterpillar. And I'm like, that's a huge positive for me, at least.
Yeah.
So it's important. If you're small and you can get a line of credit, do it. You don't have to always use it because they want you to do business with them, and they're always going to help you make sure you toe that line. And that's just, I mean, this came up maybe a month ago. Now I'm like contemplating, should I get back into the business?
Andy bolted on us.
No.
I know. But you're right. I mean, you're absolutely right, Casey. Other people's money, right? That's the number one rule in business is
how do you think we got our storage facilities, man?
There you go. If you didn't have capital, we wouldn't have capitalism. That's why it's in there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I learned this all from junk removal. They taught me the basics of business. And I remember I met Andy a long time ago. Him and I, we didn't get along at first. We talked shit to each other. We thought, oh yeah, we're whatever. I'm better, you're better, it doesn't matter. Then we figured out we were just getting pitted against each other by our own franchise. The one thing he told me was use it as a vehicle. And I didn't know what he said. I didn't know what it meant. He said, use it as a vehicle. You know, it doesn't have to be your forever. And that's what I did. So we used it as a vehicle. And in that 6 years, the amount of knowledge I gained from hands-on experience, sweat equity, whatever you want to call it, it led me into the next steps. And then I talked about my demo company briefly in another episode. I did demolition for about 10 months,
nice,
full structural demolition. And then I closed it down because I knew if I wanted to be successful, I'd have to recreate the wheel, get right back into the daily grind of 24/7, me. And I didn't want that for me and my family. So I looked at how could I succeed without going tits to the wall or broke. And that's use other people's money and sit down and figure out, okay, if I want to get here, what are the different paths, right? And a lot of these, I have a couple clients, man, nothing compared to what y'all are taking in, but a couple of my clients, I like the year 1, year 2.
Yep.
The reason why is because where I'm living now, I was very limited on my area. I was in a franchise, couldn't go outside those bounds.
Yep.
But what we did in that small area, in the short amount of time, they all asked me like, hey, how much was your marketing budget? And I wanted your take on this because this is what I told them. My marketing budget was never a set rate. It always fluctuated. I never believed in having, this is I only do $3,000 a month in marketing, or whatever. For me, it's all relative, man. 1 month it could be $7 grand. 1 month could be $700, and I kept that fluctuating with what my market was calling.
Yeah, no, you're right. And take that back to the concept of budgeting, right? So what you're talking about, Casey, is you have gotten comfortable using debt because you visually or on a spreadsheet or in QuickBooks, however you do it, you've gotten comfortable with taking on that debt, understanding that debt is a tool. It has a cost. So no debt is free unless it's, your own debt. And you take that and you apply it to the business and you associate the cost of that debt to the business. And then you decide if it was a good decision or not. And so a lot of people come to me and they don't understand how to utilize debt, everything from a credit card. Like the first way to utilize debt in a business is get a credit card. And so I tell everyone, I mean, we have like 9 credit cards in the business and in multiple of our businesses. And we run anywhere between 30 to 150,000 in credit card debt every month. Right. But that's not my money. That's the bank's money. That's American Express's money. Right. So yes, I have a $20,000 Home Depot bill that I could just take. Yes, I could easily take that money out of my bank and pay Home Depot, but I don't want to. I'd rather keep it for myself, right? My money is for me. What if I need to go to the hospital? And what if I need to get this? What if I need to fly? I need my money. My money is for me. If American Express, the Bank of American Express, is willing to offer me cash on credit terms, right? I'm going to pay Home Depot with American Express, and then I'll pay American Express back 30 days later. But $1 in my pocket today is better than not $1 in my pocket. Any money I can keep longer is better. So I tell people that in order to get comfortable using debt, start with a credit card, right? Which means put everything on the credit card, right? Let the customers pay you into an operating account. The operating account goes up. They're like, holy crap, I didn't make $50,000 this month in profit. Yeah, we know you didn't. You made $50,000 in revenue. You have a $40,000 credit card bill plus payroll. Pay that off and you got whatever's left over. That's your actual profit. But guess what? You just utilized debt to grow your business, right? Because you kept your 40, 50 grand, you kept that in the bank for 30 days longer because American Express told you could do so. That's the first step in understanding how to use capital. The next step is, okay, I can borrow 100,000. I'm going to get that 100,000 in a lump sum. It's going to be in the bank. As soon as it hits the bank, it starts costing me money. I know it's going to cost me X to carry that 100,000 annually, call it 15,000, 15%. I'm going to pay $15,000 to somebody to use that 100 grand. What can I do with that 100 grand? Can I generate more than 100 grand, hopefully, plus my 15, plus some more than that? Then it was usually a good investment, right? So in every business that we look at, it's like, okay, I can hire an employee for $100,000, or I can hire an employee for $40,000. Or I can take $40,000 and I can borrow $400,000. And then can I do more with that? So that's another kind of advanced business element, is like, if I want to invest in another employee, but that means I have to use my own cash in that employee, or could I go borrow that money somewhere and put that money somewhere else and drive more with whatever? So that's kind of my
banks.
Always in from using debt. What's that?
I was going to say, you talk to banks. Like the one thing I never thought you could do until, I don't know, a couple of years ago, schedule a coffee, lunch, whatever with a banker. And for one, they're going to pay for it, which is awesome. Free lunch, right, Andy?
Lunch.
But for two, they want your business. So they're going to tell you all the cool stuff they can offer you. They're going to say, hey, man, look, we know you're a small business. We don't normally do this, but we could do this. Next thing you know it, get a credit card, $1,000. Awesome. Yep. You keep doing that. There's no rule saying you can't have 15 different accounts. I personally have 5 banks that I go through, and 4 of them have business credit cards. The other one is USAA, which I just personally use. Yep. And the one thing I've used with each and every bank, I've asked them, what makes you better than that one? Right. Even though I have an account with both. And they're like, well, we have a 9-month accessible CD you could use for your taxes. I'm like, oh shit, okay. So I can build a little money. Awesome. Yeah. And I can access it whenever I want. So these questions, you can, for all you listening, you can take any banker to lunch or coffee and ask them, how can I use your services to help my business grow? And they're going to sit with you, and they're going to actually give you some information, good information.
Yeah. And then just kind of, that's great point, Casey. And then to kind of go through the marketing conversation, I look at everything through customer acquisition cost, cost to acquire a new customer, right? And so, and there's 15 ways to skin this cat. So I'm not going to get into the formula because we've all argued online about what the formula is. But when I look at customer acquisition, that's the standard opportunity to say, do I apply more fuel on this fire, or do I just let this little stack of twigs burn, right? Now, in order to grow this business, we have to have our customers come from anywhere between 8 to 10 different sources. You could also expand those and say they come from 10 to 30 different sources, right? But we can lump our customer acquisition into a few different sources. And then I look at what am I putting into each one of those buckets? What does that bucket produce, right? And then is there an opportunity for me to pour fuel onto that fire? Should I put more into that bucket? So again, marketing for me is inputs and outputs. It's okay, how much activity are you putting in? Whether it's your digital, your community-based, or your repeat and your referral or your commercial work, right? What are you putting in? Is that time? Is that hours? Is that visits? Is that drop-ins? Is that the mailbox? Is that phone calls? Is that text messages? Is that emails? Whatever. That's all inputs, right? What are you inputting? And then what are you getting out of it? And how much did it cost you, right? You can value your time at a certain dollar amount and say, I'm going to go out and do all this work. And if it generates me revenue, then it was worth it because I made this much. So for me, I'm maniacal about how we market. What does it cost? Return on time, return on energy, and return on investment, right? And then is there an opportunity to pour more fuel on that fire? Now, there's always going to be a diminishing return in marketing. You can put $5,000 into Google, and then you can put 10 grand into Google, and then 15 grand into Google, and then before you know it, you got 30 grand into Google, and you're not getting the same return as you did in your first 15. That's the law of diminishing returns. You can do the same thing with the mailbox. You can do the same thing with other stuff. So for me, what I ask every business owner is like, where did your business come from? But more importantly, where is it going to come from? So if your goal is $1 million next year and your average job size is $500, you know you need to do 2,000 jobs. So where are those 2,000 jobs going to come from? Maybe I need to do 1,600 new jobs because I know 400 are going to come from repeat from this year, right? So I harp on everyone to think aggressively about where is your business actually going to come from, and then
those repeats too. Don't forget to nurture those repeats because those repeats can grow just as much as the new ones. And that is one thing I've seen is A, I haven't tracked where my jobs are coming from, or B, I haven't kept up with my followers, people, my fans, people that believe in me. Dude, send them a $10 gift card to Starbucks. I mean, that gives you half a cup of coffee these days, but send them something. Say, hey, thank you for the business. Because now they're gonna be like, I appreciate you going out of your way. You know what? I got some shit in my garage again. Come on,
Bob. I tell everybody, does anybody know how many times 1-800-GOT-JUNK emails their customers?
Weekly?
24 times. 24 times a year. It's
bi-weekly,
the second and fourth Wednesday of the month. 1-800-GOT-JUNK sends out email. So
stay relevant, man. Stay relevant.
That just goes to tell you, like, I would much rather spend time and energy keeping a customer than I would trying to get another customer. And
100%.
I think those customers that we earn now are the ones that get us through the tighter times, the tougher times, right? Or flip it on its upside. If I get that $99 customer now, next year I might get a $500 customer or a $500 job out of the exact same customer. And that's the beauty of our business is junk grows. It just naturally grows. I don't know how it happens, but it happens.
No, I mean, I tell the same joke all the time, right? There's never less stuff. It's always more stuff when you actually call or the time we ever show up. Obviously there's sometimes it's less, very rarely. Actually, I did the hillbilly math on the side. So our initiatives to touch repeat customers, we touch them 26 times a year. Nice. That's our initiatives. A little bit different methodology. The fact is, though, what you said is true. The way that those of us that have been around for a while win and continue to win is the fact that, we have a stacked deck because we have a stacked deck of customers that not only can they use us again, they can refer us again. And our competition doesn't have that. And it's important that you own that email address or that email list and you know who they are. And that's why it's all about collecting that data on the front end versus, oh shit, it's fucking December. My phone's not ringing. Where do I start? I can tell you, you need to start day one by collecting that data of where you came up with your customer, who are they, and all their good contact info and email addresses and spelling and pronunciation or punctuation, all that shit matter. So when you do want to mail them or you do want to email them or you just want to call them and follow up with them, you know exactly who you're talking to. And I anticipate the fly-by-nighters, the guys that got in because it was easy the last 2 years, right? Easy come, easy go. Because when it gets difficult, when it gets cold, when it's complicated, then they go away.
Oh yeah.
So absolutely. Let's talk about the franchise world competition. What do they do during these times to stay relevant. You know, I want to know my enemy. What are they doing to take out the independent owner operators like myself and a lot of our listeners?
Yeah, I would say number one is they're planning, right? So the franchisor, the franchise organization is ensuring that the franchisee has the capital that they need to do what they need to do. If they don't, then they're in trouble. They're already in trouble. So I would say one thing that the franchise owners and the franchise organizations know is that now's the time to plan, right? We have whatever is going on right now is going to affect 2024. So I would say that's one of the biggest differences right there, Andy, is that everyone has flags up right now and everyone's going to be working extra hard. So I don't want to be a Debbie Downer here, but like working your ass off is par for the course in 2024. That's just going to get you through 24 because the franchise companies are already thinking about it, right? And so you're going to see more lawn signs. You're going to see more trucks. You're going to see more aggressive marketing, more TV, right? You're going to see more of all of it. And that's going to be the requirement because especially your successful franchise companies or owners that have been in the game for more than a couple of years, they're in mastermind groups. They've got mentors. They connect with each other. They're all talking. They all know that next year we got to go hard, and we're already planning to go hard. And so I know that all of the 2, 3, 4, and 5 million junk removal owners, I'm good friends with about 4 or 5 of them. Right? Everybody is working extra hard right now, and just going, okay, it's going to get weird at some point in time. Let's just keep going. Let's just keep going. We got to have the cash in the bank. We got to make sure that we're whole. We got to make sure no one's making really aggressive decisions right now. Right. So everyone's just kind of going, 24 is going to be a little bit more of 23 and let's get ready for it. And so I sound like a broken record, but what the franchise companies are forcing the owners to do is plan and prepare and do more than they've ever done before.
Yeah. All right. Oh, I appreciate that. That is my mindset. I like what you said there towards the end, and we'll go around the horn here in a second. What you said about, it's not that they're making aggressive moves now. They're doing what they've been. What I heard was, they're doing what they've been doing. They're doing more of it. They're going harder, right? Because we know it's going to take more work to get us where we got to go. Let's go around the horn here with respect to everybody's time and the listeners that stuck around hanging out with us. Casey, let's go to you first. What was your top takeaway from today with Justin Waltz?
Man, there's a lot. We touched on some good stuff today, man. I have to say, top takeaway is, look, you're in a position that you put yourself in because you wanted the freedom, you wanted the fruits from your labor, and just because it's starting to get hard doesn't mean that you need to clam up and think that you're just a complete failure, a piece of shit. It just means you have to keep getting creative. Look at your market, and look at your competition. Why not? I know we can use the cliche, like my competition is me yesterday. Okay, well, what were you doing yesterday that you're not doing today? That's what you want to do. Yeah. But the biggest thing that I see is you always have to find your edge. What is your edge going to be next quarter? What's your edge going to be next year? Once you find that edge, you have to run with it and make sure you saturate.
Yeah, and it's a really good point, Casey. And I'm going to interrupt the roundtable, Andy, but I would say one thing that you hit on, Casey, you said something that rung a bell with me is I am leveling up my education. I'm leveling up my mentorship. I'm leveling up my I doubled down this year and invested more than I've ever have in education. And it's already just paid off 10x. And so like to your point there is you got to keep going. If you're going, you go all in and then surround yourself with the edge. The edge can be your education. It can be your accountability. Yeah. It can be your mentor group. It can be whoever you surround yourself with, right? That could be your edge because the individual that's not listening to this podcast, the individual that's not in the Facebook groups, but they're out there grinding every day. They feel a way too. Like they feel it too. We all feel it. We're all going to feel it, but it's who are you surrounding yourself with? Are you going to be in the trenches with somebody else together? Or are you going to kind of die a slow death by yourself? And yeah.
Is that your top takeaway? I like it.
There you go. That's my takeaway. I'd say, it doesn't matter who you are. You got to have a coach. You got to have a mentor. You got to surround yourself. LeBron James spends $1 million a year on recovery. That was like an eye opener for me. And so I'm like sitting high on my high horse because I just leveled up. I joined a group about 2 months ago, went to Austin, Texas, completely game changer. So I'm leveling up myself by basically
going. Don't mind me asking.
going 10x rather than 2x. And that's another book that I just recently picked up. It's a lot easier to go 10x than it is 2x. And so if you accept that next year is going to be a little tougher than this year, why not go harder? Because my partner knows this. The reason I love real estate is I used to worry about $1,000 problems. Then I started worrying about $10,000 problems. Now, like, a $10,000 problem stings, but like I'm fine. And it's the same amount of energy dealing with a $1,000 problem as a $10,000 problem. It's the same amount of energy. And I tell you what, it pisses me off the same amount, right? It sucks. And that's what I think about in 2024. I think if you're going to accept that you got to work harder, why accept that you're going to double your business? Why not try and 10x your business? That's just kind of my mindset for everything that I do.
Amen.
Yeah.
You are the second person in the last half a day. I heard about it at lunch already. I heard 10x at lunch today. So there's obviously power in the people that you surround yourself with. And what I wrote down is similar, but it comes down to accountability. That's what it comes down to. The people that are willing to accept what they are responsible for are going to be the ones that are successful. The people that are in the Facebook groups bitching and complaining about this and that and the other thing, I can't tell you. I'm almost not on the Facebook groups ever because I'm working. I'm getting shit done. I'm making things happen, right? And that's the thing. Like, we do this podcast. This is my investment each week. I have the opportunity to sit down with an expert week in and week out. This is part of my education. Last week we looked about marketing. Now, Justin, I'm hearing about, hey, how do the big boys do it, right? So in my head, I'm like, oh, this is what I'm doing right. And there's some things that you said today where I was like, yep, that's the shit I need to work on. I know I need to work on it. And hearing it one more time was great. So it's all about that accountability. What are you doing week in and week out to continually improve your fighting position? Because it's about improving yourself as a business and as a business owner. Those are two different things. And also,
the third step for me.
What's that?
So he said education for me. Like, that's I need to get better.
Right. Because it's about the three things. It's being a better business. A lot of people will spend the money on the better business, but then it's about being a better business owner and also being a better person, educating yourself to be a better person. All right, Justin, really do appreciate your time today. Anything you want to announce? Any ways people can get a hold of you? This is your time to plug all the things that you are.
JW@justinwelds.com is the email. The Junk Removal Group is the Junk Removal Millionaire. Head on over. I'm a big supporter of Andy and Casey and these guys. Appreciate you. The website is www.thejunkremovalmillionaire.com. I am not a YouTuber. It's literally the exact same thing that I teach in person. I am not here. I don't get rich off of YouTube. I don't get rich off of courses. I have a job. I have a lot of stuff going on. Pretty much about 150 guys forced me to put it online, and so I did. And we have plenty of references there too. So I appreciate all of you. Again, I am here to be an advocacy for the industry. I think we all should be growing. I think I actually, if you go on the website and you sign up, you don't have to pay anything. You just sign up. You can listen to Cameron Harold. Cameron is the former COO of 1-800-GOT-JUNK. He's one of Brian Scudmore's best friends. I met Cameron in Brian's office a long time ago. I was like 21 years old, and we did a shot of whiskey together. And Cameron has been an advocate for the business, even though he's not in the business anymore, because he loves Brian and he's such a friend. And Cameron and I talked, and we think there's enough business around for probably 5,000 to 10,000 junk removal legitimate businesses in the industry, because I think everyone needs hotel rooms, they need burgers, they need cleaning and moving services. So why shouldn't we grow to that size? So if we all can hold each other accountable and keep pushing each other and keep growing, I think it's the best thing for the industry.
Nope, absolutely love it. No, appreciate your time today, Justin.
Thank you,
also, I didn't say Jobber. There we go. Jobber does good things. I wore this t-shirt. That's it.
Love Jobber. Good job, Jobber.
Good job, Jobber. And they gave me a Yeti, and I drank so much water, I had to step out during the episode to go take a pee. Let's
plug Jobber. If you could have plugged Jobber back in the day. We were talking about you got to have all your customer database so you can email.
I know they're
with your if you don't have a CRM, Jobber, and so that you can go hammer your repeat customers.
There he is.
All right, thanks,
JW,
guys.
everybody. Justin, thank you so much for your time.
You guys.
And for everybody else, all the other listeners, thank you for joining us on another episode of the Trash Talk Business Podcast. I'm Casey. I did that last week, I think. I'm Andy. He's Casey. Thank you again, Justin, for being on the show. We will see you next week.
See you guys.